Hello friends, welcome to Growing Scientist, and today I'll be talking about plotting dynamic graphs in React Native without using any React Native animated library. Uh, so the end product of this tutorial will be this graph changing dynamically. So let's get started now. So here I am using React Native SVG charts for graphing purpose. So I'll be using line chart from this library in my React Native app. So the first step you should do is to install this library in your project using your respective package manager. So and let me go ahead and show you the code that you should first test whether your SVG chart library is working or not. So you should copy and paste this code to check whether. So in my case the code is working fine. So let's go ahead and talk about the implementation, how we will implement this dynamically changing line chart in React Native. Let's go ahead. So what I'm doing, I'm making use of component state. So in the component state, I'm creating a variable called data, which is of type array of and this array is of fixed size, say 300 points, and I'm filling this array with zeros. That is, I'm initializing this array with zeros and passing this array to my line chart component. So another thing I'm doing is I'm using use effect hook, which is analogous to component did mount lifecycle of class components in React. So I'm using set interval method in the use effect lifecycle hook, where I'm after a certain interval of time setting the random value at a point in the, or I'm changing the value of the array at a point with some random value. Alright, let's quickly visualize it. So here is my array called data array, initialized with zeros, so of length 300 points. So okay, of length 300 points. So what I'm doing when my use effect is called, in use effect I'm using set interval, which is called after 200 milliseconds. So what set interval is going to do, set interval is going to keep track of the array index and each array index, and it will be changing the data at a particular index at one time. So initially my data array would be like this, and when first time set interval will be called, it will be changing the position at the first index to some random value, let's say 4, and keeping the rest of the array unchanged. And then after that this data will be again rendered by the line chart component, and after that, when the set interval is next called, it will be changing the next index to some random value, say 5, and this is how the code will progress, changing values at each index. So when the code will reach the index of 300, it will reset the values to 000. That means it will plot a straight line. Now let's go back to our code and
let's start implementing that algorithm. So far we were uh, plotting these fixed points in our graph. Now let's go ahead and implement some constant variable, say graph size, say of 300 size. Now let's create a new array called array, and let's keep the size of the array is equal to graph size. And now let's fill the array with the zeros. Okay, now let's go ahead and create our state data using useState. So I'm and let's initialize the state with the zero filled array of size 300. Let's comment this data and let's create a new state variable called position, which will be keeping track of index number of data array. So let's declare const position is equal to useState, and let's initialize it with graph size, which is set to 300. Now let's go ahead and use effect hook, which takes two parameters. One is the callback and second is the variable which tracks uh, which whether the component need to be re-rendered or not. So here we will pass a square bracket. Now let's use set interval method here, which also takes two parameters. The first parameter is again a callback, and the second parameter is the number of millisecond after which the callback should be called. So in the callback, let's use set position method, and which gives position value as a parameter, and use this position to check uh, the position. If the position of data is 0, that is index is equal to 0, then we'll set our data array to 0. So let's return, or what we can say is array which is already filled with zeros, and let's return the position is equal to position plus 1 modulus graph size, which will give the next position. Else what we will do, if our position is not 0, then we will simply change the data and the position. So to do that, let me copy this code and let me paste it, and so we will make change here. Now our position is other than 0, so we will simply set the data here. We will set the data at a particular index, so at a particular position. To do that, let's create another variable called array and assign it the current data array, and let's change the data array at a position at the current index position to some random value, and let's return this data array. Now let's go ahead and return the new position of the data array, that is position plus 1 modulus graph size. So that this is the next position, so we don't need this set position. Let's get rid of it, and now let's pass the second parameter of set interval, which is the number of milliseconds after which set interval callback is called. Let's pass 200 milliseconds. Now this app, let me check the app. Yes, this app is working correct. That is, it is plotting dynamically, but there is some problem in the code. It is after filling 300 points, it is not setting the state value to 0. So there is some problem. Let me check that out. So after actually this piece of code at position 0 is not working correctly. So let's change a bit and troubleshoot what's happening here. So let's first, I think is this return this set data is not returning this 0 filled array. So let's use another way to return this array. Let me reload the app now. Still no change. We can, let me change the millisecond to 100 and let's see whether our app is refreshing or not. Let me reload the app. Yeah, the plotting rate has increased. That means my app is refreshing. Let's troubleshoot more. Let me go ahead and console that array at position 0 that we are setting. So now let's go ahead and refresh the app using R button on the console. So this is the first array that state data we are setting to 0. Now it is plotting the random data, and the moment we reach the position 0 again, we are getting this, that is the old data. So here we are not setting our array to 0. So to do that, we will use array.fill0 and return the array. I think this will now solve the problem. Let me go ahead and reload the app and also share my mobile phone screen. I think now it's working correctly. Every time it is resetting the graph to 0. So I keep posting such videos on React Native on my channel. Please subscribe the channel if you haven't. Please like the video and do comment on the video. Thank you.